there's been so much misinformation about Rasta, and as time goes on, Rasta gets fuzzier and fuzzier to the mainstream world. And they have all these misconceptions about Rasta. And yet there's this reverence for Rasta, but at the same time there's no commitment to the ancestral history and culture that has brought this country. So what I'm saying is that there's so much we need to come, if possible, and if you agree, we'd like to come back and invigorate people's respect and understanding of the culture.
Because the thing is, 5 years ago, 2015, the government is asking the question, who is Rastafari?
Oh my goodness.
Greetings again, one and all, here for this Upper Room of Zion Reasoning. As always, Lidj, Yefdi, Yefdeyah of RastafariRenaissance.com. And now for this evening, we really didn't have too much prepared as far as topics to speak about, mainly because throughout this whole quarantine period, we've tried our best to stay connected with certain ones, of course, via the internet, these video chats, phones, so on and so forth, and just, being as honest as we can with certain ones, depending on, their grasping levels as far as this entire situation has been concerned. And, we've really kind of come to a certain understanding as far as our own mental capacity within what we've been seeing out here in the world. And I mean, just to really put it plainly, there's just a lot of things that people clearly have not been prepared for, clearly have not had the time to, build up their spiritual and mental strength for. I mean, and that's not even to say the least, certain financial protections and benefits and put those certain things into place. I mean, I'm pretty sure even to a certain extent, those who may have prepared the most or put themselves in a certain position the most, have been affected some way in one sense or another with, the brief sudden outbreak of this whole debacle. And that's completely understandable. But at the same time, it's just, the panic that still even reigns while this entire situation has continued to fester. It, really shows where we are in time. We have, for, quite some years now, been here on Discipleship Radio and many of our own platforms and sharing this information, of course, with our co-hosts here on the dashboard. A big shout out to Sister Mariama Tane, and her family as well, Brother Yason, and of course, Rebbe Yaden, Rebbe Yavishem, and of course, the entire family, everyone on the dashboard. And of course, all of you listening here, I definitely and sincerely hope that you all are still staying clear and keeping safe, throughout this situation, because even so, with everything that has continued to encompass this entire situation, we definitely have taken some time for reflection and also, continue to prepare ourselves for when this time passes. That's really been, the focus for, myself in this sense. And I've relayed that message to as many as I have been humanly possible, while staying, abreast of most of the situation as it continues to develop. So while we keep this entire situation in our forefront, we definitely have taken the time to reflect on what it actually has been showing us, even prophetically in this time. Just as I mentioned before going into that whole spiel, we've been here for quite some time here on Discipleship Radio and other platforms, going through these scriptural texts and going through these historical references and sharing as much of the information that is out here in the world as we humanly could And it was all for good reason. Everyone has had their part to play here on Discipleship Radio, and hopefully ones have heeded that message, because this is just a shining example, and again, really only a pit stop for where we're actually headed. And I mean that in a worldly sense, as far as what's going on at this very moment. Again, we remember that we are heading into our Passover season. It wasn't so long ago we were seeing these warnings in the sun, moon, and the stars. And again, I'm speaking prophetically on this sense. And I don't tend to always share a lot of the prophetics in the sense, of course, as, for example, maybe Rabbi Yadin may do in so many instances, Memhir Yadin may share. And, I know that that's definitely not my lane, in a sense, as we say in today's world, especially amongst, our own generation, certain ones have to stay in their lane. And I definitely do my best to do that. John willing, I will continue to be able to do that, as well as the other members here on the dashboard, and of course for you all listening as well. But it's again, just a time for reflection, and also a time for preparation for ones who may still be quarantined, or definitely have the opportunity to re-examine their lives and re-examine the things that they've been doing on up until this point. It's definitely a blessing if ones are still alive, of course, and still have the time to correct a lot of the mistakes that they may have been making in their lives before, and not readjust. This is definitely an opportune time for ones to do that, and hopefully ones are seeing it as such. Because I can't really stress enough that after this entire quarantine period is over, we are most certainly going to be in a different world, socially, economically, spiritually, physically, so on and so forth. And that really should be the residence for one's within their own minds, while still operating under this quarantine period. And hopefully, that message reaches, each and every one that may, come across this particular channel, this podcast, this broadcast. And we hope to share it a bit more far and wide, as we always do and attempt to do, every 7 days in, 7 days out. So, I mean, that's really, a bit of the crux of the matter of the situation which we're sharing here. But that's something that, we hope that ones really take to heart. That, of course, this too shall pass. But in the meantime, prepare yourself for when that time will pass. How will you operate moving on into the future? How will you think of others after this period is over? How will you deal with certain situations when they come up? How will you prepare yourself for certain situations as these, if they are to come up in the future, which we know they will, because life works in cycles, as we mentioned so many times before. I've done in a complete podcast on cycles. Sister Mariama has done, so many podcasts on cycles. Brother Yadin, even Brother Yason has, shared much information, especially with the artwork. Hopefully ones are receiving that message, because a lot of these themes, they're very cyclical. Again, we have life cycles, we have a weekly cycle, we have a daily cycle, we have monthly cycles, we have yearly. I mean, this world just operates off of that. Time is cyclical, not linear. And hopefully, I'm not being too vague with a lot of what we share here, but it's so many points to touch on. We hope that ones are taking this time again seriously, to re-educate themselves, to readjust to the world that you're living in, and to rethink a lot of the things that you've been doing thus far in your life, and keep the things that are beneficial and throw out those that are not. Because this time moving forward, the world will be different. As change is always constant, the world will indeed be different after this quarantine period. And as we move into our Passover season, one should acknowledge that, especially those who listen to our podcast here and moving forward. So that's really just, the crux of our message here for this evening. No gloom and doom, no, no really extravagant message to really share with you all. And even though I thank my co-hosts here on the dashboard and all of our listeners for allowing me to continue to share my thoughts with you all on these platforms and continue to encourage you to be the best that you can be at whatever your endeavor may be, especially within studying the mysteries of Jah Almighty, or the Great Creator. This time just really has, again, put a lot of perspectives into place, put a lot of priorities into place, and reorganizing yourself to acknowledge that, but also operate on that moving forward will be the best benefit that you'll ever encounter for the rest of your life. So I pray indeed, of course, one stay safe, one stay, of course, on the path. Jah bless and keep you. And as always, stay tuned here on Discipleship Radio on Blog Talk Radio. This is Lidj Yefdi Yefdeyah signing out. Shalom.